You know, I'm right. The show, the podcast, the experience that uncovers the origin stories of some of the biggest names in sports, media, and entertainment. Nick Durst here, along with Joe Calabrese and Joe. As always, we're always very excited when we can get a fellow Staten Islander on with us.
Absolutely. His official title is the Executive VP and General Manager at Staten Island Entertainment. And they own the Staten Island University Hospital Community Park. So we're very excited to have him on and get to pick his brain on all things Staten Island and what he did growing up here. Gary Perone. Gary, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, guys. Thanks for having me on. It's great to see you guys, and I look forward to this.
All right, so we're getting right into it here, Gary. Is it true that when you were 12, you went to a baseball card show and bought an autographed ticket and a new MLB baseball, and Rickey Henderson signed it with a Sharpie marker? How did that make you feel? And that set you on the path of loving baseball?
That's so funny. Yes, we went to one of the churches in Brooklyn. I think I know where you got the story from, probably Joe Jackson, but we went there and I handed Rickey Henderson a baseball and he signed it with a Sharpie. And I got pretty pissed. And I made him sign all of Joe's extra stuff that he had. So we have a ton of Rickey Henderson autographs. So I put down all the baseball cards in front of him and everything else. So Joe's gonna have to split his profits with me later on in life. But there we go. But yeah, it kind of got me pissed because I'm like, dude, you've been signing baseball all day. You know it's gonna bleed. Come on, what's wrong? But yeah, so he yelled at Rickey Henderson.
That's awesome. So you're a Brooklyn guy.
Yeah.
I was born in Brooklyn too. I was born in Maimonides. But you were raised there before moving to Staten Island.
Yes.
So what were your favorite places to eat growing up?
Favorite places to eat. So in the beginning of my years and before I moved to Marine Park, it was always Spumoni Gardens, because you would play Little League Baseball, or you play, and then you go to Spumoni Gardens afterwards. And I always remember that. And Nelly Bly, it was cool. And then as you get older, my first job, I was 13 years old. I worked at Brandon Carr.
Oh boy.
Ooh.
So roast beef, dips, yes. So, and that's where I would say in growing up, it was Spumoni Gardens and Brandon Carr.
I was gonna ask if you were a Rolling Roaster or a Brennan and Carr guy. It seems like you answered that already.
No, I like Rolling Roaster because the buns are different. It's a different, so it depends the mood I'm in, but I'm always going to be faithful to Brennan and Carr because they gave me my first job. And I don't tell many people this story, but Frank, who used to be a waiter in Brennan and Carr, he actually gave me my first bubbly. I'm not going to say what it was, but he gave me my first bubbly. It was pretty cool. So Brennan and Carr it is.
I mean, they're all great places.
Yeah.
So you went to St. Francis College.
Yeah.
What'd you study there?
Psychology and business. And that was my beginning. And then I don't know, wrapped it into baseball somehow, but here we are.
Well, what did you want to do when you were in college?
Well, I wanted to be a psychologist. That I always felt, I wanted to be a psychologist. I was always human behavior and the way to deal with people on a daily basis. But I did see how it helps now in terms of what I'm doing today. You come across a lot of people in the industries that you work with. You're dealing with different personalities every day. And especially now in my new role, when you're getting a club put together in a front office staff, it kind of helps you in a way. And then I think it gives perspective too on when we're doing sales for the team. So I've used it to a different advantage, no than just having someone sit across on the couch for me and tell me their problems. So it's worked out pretty good.
Yeah, and after college, you end up with the MTA. So I'm sure you needed to use that psychology well, seeing a lot of crazy creatures out there. What was that time period like for you?
Oh wow, you definitely did digging. This is pretty good. So yes, I worked at the. My dad was one of the number one Masons in New York City. So I had taken the test like every civil service father does. They make their kid take a test, and I took the test, and I wanted to start working with them in 1998, I believe. I was working nighttime shifts, 10 to 6, underground, chopping concrete on train tracks. I did that, and I hated every single moment of it, but it did give me, and I say it this way, the people who work those jobs and have done this all these years, my dad included, like, they really worked hard. And so you have more of an appreciation. Actually, I had more of appreciation for my dad because I go to work for you. Oh, well, now I know what you did for me. So to live that for a year and a half, 2 years, It was interesting. It was a lot of hard work, and but at the same time too, it made me realize what I wanted to do in the future. I didn't want to just stop myself. My goal was always to be involved with baseball in the city somehow, whether it be from a coaching standpoint, whether it be from running camps, clinics, whatever it was, just to be involved with baseball. So, but the MTA, I always said if I wrote a book one day, it's going to be called "A Light at the End of the Tunnel." Getting in my book. So,
pretty good there. So, 2000, you're the Brooklyn guy. The Cyclones are coming. They're going to come back, baseball back in Brooklyn. You end up joining the team as the director of community relations and marketing sales. How did you go about pursuing that opportunity?
I think it was back in 1997 because one of the things that years ago, when you wanted to get a job in baseball, you would have to go down to the baseball winter meetings. You went down to the baseball winter meetings, and the reason why you went down was to network, and you would go down and meet a lot of people. My first actual job offer was in 1997 or 98. No, it was 97. It was in New Orleans with the San Bernardino Stampede. It was a AA team for the Dodgers. I remember calling my wife at home. This is after my daughter Nicolette was just like a year old. I said, "Hon, I got the job in baseball I always wanted." She goes, "What do you want?" I said, "Oh, some sales job. It's in San Bernardino with the Dodgers." She goes, "How much a month?" I said, $1,000 a month. She goes, "No, we're not going." So I stayed back home. And this all wraps back into how I got involved with the Cyclones. At that time, I stayed home. I was coaching high school baseball for a bit, Bishop Ford. And then I had the Long Ball Club, which was the first off-season training program for youth, amateur, and high school players. That's before the craze went into private lessons and everything else. And we were doing that because I had some friends who were playing in the minor leagues, and they needed to work during the off-season. So instead of doing it during the season or during when Little League was playing or travel ball was playing, we did it from the last out of the World Series to the first pitch of spring training. We grew a great program, and at that time, I met so many people along the way. I was actually referred for the position to go join them. I remember receiving a phone call. And this is when we had a long ball club. But the gentleman who runs the Queens Kings wants to see you in Queens. And I said, "Oh, okay." Just so happened to be, so we went out there. I bought a bunch of tickets for the kids, and we'd go to the field. And next thing you know, I look at this guy. I say, "Hey, come on, I know you." He goes, "Yeah, I know you too. We met in New Orleans back in 1990. It was Steve Cohen."
Wow.
And so Steve and I, we met back then. And then it just so happened to be I was working still at the Transit, but then also too, Fred Wilpon and the rest of people would call me up and they said this would be good for you, and I knew that I was wanting to be in baseball, so I said okay. And at that time, when you were with the city job, you had 5 years to kind of go back. So I said I would give myself a plan, work 5 years, and see how it goes. 22 years later, here I am. I didn't go back to the TA, but I still keep in touch with them, but I'm happy to. That's how I became a Cyclone.
There you go. So how exciting was that initial, first 2 seasons there?
Yeah.
And obviously, a lot of success in the first season for the team on the field as well, and then obviously a lot of tragedy in the country and the city here. So it's kind of a crazy time, but you got to really grow things, and I mean the stands were packed in those initial seasons.
When I tell people that probably was the best experience I will ever have, in terms of, when you're living at home, you're from Brooklyn and you're bringing back a team after the Brooklyn Dodgers. So being in director of community relations position too was even, I always said to people, if I didn't have that position, it wouldn't allow me to do everything I do today. And it's true because the excitement was there. Everyone embraced it, no matter where you walked. I told people this all the time. Wherever we went, we were treated like we were major league rock stars. You go to a restaurant, you go anywhere, it was nuts. And these players that were playing were just Class A baseball players. So, and they were getting their first experience. And I think we had such a great group of players that it kind of blended in with the borough. Working with the old Brooklyn Dodgers at the time was something. I always tell people that Johnny Padres always gave me my best advice years ago. Along with Ralph Branker, so it was just a really fun time. But then, yes, 9/11 did happen. And then, I always said the Cyclones always were like a roller coaster. We had a great year, and then we went down, and then we go back up and back down. So, and we've experienced that over time. But the first 2 years of that ballpark, 289,000 people in the first year, 310,000 in the second year. We had a great group of people, very creative. but the borough itself lent to the success. The excitement that was built up, and people becoming Cyclone fans. Now when you look back 20 years ago, over 5 million people went there. And it was because of those first 2 years.
I mean, that Coney Island setting is amazing. And we'll get back to the Cyclones in a minute.
Yeah.
So Nick and I, we're not that old yet, but we're still old enough to remember when the Staten Island Yankees played at CSI. So you were there as assistant GM of the Staten Island Yankees from 2004 to 2006. So describe that transition, who brought you over there, and what was it like doing that?
I never forget. I received a phone call in it was September 2004. I was sitting in the airport on my way back from Arizona from going to scout school. And they're like, hey, listen, we want to bring you over to work here. And I just told them nice this, just do me a favor, just call the Mets, ask for permission. I want to do it the right way. And they offered me, so it was the first ownership group that was here. And I came in, and it was kind of like, I live out here now, so why not try it? And if I wasn't, as much as I always tell people, I will always love Brooklyn. I love the Cyclones, what was built there. Leaving there the first time, like everything else, you never want to leave something, especially when you have it deep down inside, you're really affectionate to it. But it just so happened to be at a time in my career that if I wanted to get a bump up and learn more and do more, I needed to make a move. So I came here, and it was interesting. It kind of gave more perspective to what minor league baseball meant in New York City. Minor league baseball in New York City is not an easy thing to do, because of the fact that you have 2 major league clubs, and when they're playing well, people are going to see them. And as we seen last night, last night's Subway Series, packed. And if we had a game, we played in Long Island last night, thank God. But if we had a game here, who would come here versus going there? So there is a balance to that. But yeah.
Yeah. So of course, the commute probably was a lot better there, but you go back to your Brooklyn roots in 2007, you returned to the Cyclones, and you don't get the credit you deserve about all these great promotions that are your brainchild. Of course, Seinfeld Night, which got the national stuff. You had the MLB Central bobbleheads, and my favorite events, of course, one of them I was lucky enough to work for you there, has to be the celebrity softball games. I mean, those are just incredible, so much fun, and you, of course, Joe Causey is always there. So how did you not only just come up with a lot of those ideas, but how did you get it to where they're approved and executed?
So on the Seinfeld thing, Seinfeld was Billy Hunter, Billy Hunter was with Cyclones. We had a couple of people kind of working on that in the beginning. It was their kind of brainchild. It was all of us, like, kind of the way we do it. We work together as a team, and we all kind of contribute where needed. You have a creative person, you have someone who maybe has more relationships, and we kind of tied things together for Seinfeld. I remember the first one we did when I got Larry Thomas to come out and be the soup Nazi came in, and that was a lot of fun. The other people, is throughout the course of my career where you start meeting people, but then you start thinking about, okay, how can we collaborate with everyone? And it just so happened to be like we did a Brooklyn night, and I did Brooklyn night jerseys, and I had John Franco, Rosanna Scotto, Joe Causey, and I had everyone come out to be part of that. So you tie it in, and then once you have this relationship with people and they see it's something that they enjoy as well, it becomes a better promotion. Doing celebrity softball games, which I used to get made fun of in the office, like the Gary Perone Classic, here we go again every year, but we always did it for a cause. Yeah. It was always something that we wanted to tie back into the community, because when you have celebrities, or you have, people who are local iconic, people who are recognized, it's good to bring them all together for a good cause. And over the years, we did some great softball games. I know working with WWE was really fun. Working with, and I still work with them until today on other projects. But working with WFAN and working with, Craig and Boomer and everyone who played there. So, and then having, the other celebrities come on in, it was fun. And those are things people want to see. Those are things people like. And if you could bring it all together, why not?
Yeah, and you had Sid Finch come throw out the first pitch, which was lightning quick. So that's pretty awesome. And then wasn't exactly a one of those games you had before the game, but of course you had the big debut 2 years ago of the Real Housewives of New Jersey games,
Yes.
which of course was brokered by you because you did the naming right to the stadium, which was awesome. But how exciting was it for your wife and your daughters to see you on Bravo on the Real Housewives of New Jersey?
Actually, that was funny. I think they're like, Dad, what are you doing? Like, you know, it wasn't like they were happy to see me. Like, Dad, it's so don't embarrass us. No, but yeah, working with Maimonides and working with the hospital and the mission that they had, it was special. And Michael Brinkat, who I worked with very closely with the administration there, knowing how much it meant to the hospital and to them to kind of roll out these breast cancer awareness programs. And the softball game, Dolores, you know, she is just a gem to work with. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I was kind of upset this year when they had the game with, you know, I told Mike, I said, I'm upset, I'm here. You guys are doing the game there. But what I always see too is that if we were able to make an impact with doing something for a right cause, you know, working with the housewives, they're really, you know, listen, they're really good people and their heart's in it. But Dolores and Mike have done a tremendous job in helping to raise money for breast cancer awareness for Maimonides.
Absolutely. And fingers crossed, we could get a Staten Island University Hospital Classic coming up at some point. You never know.
I can't unveil everything. It's only the first year.
Can't unveil everything. So you mentioned this before, but you're a scout, reverse scout, and obviously did the associate professional scouting for the Mets, obviously was as they are with the Cyclones. So how did that opportunity come about for you, and how was scout school?
Scout school was really interesting, and it was something, you know, when any coach who coaches, you know, baseball, and whether it be high school, college, the goal for them back then was you want to become a scout, and then you want to become a GM one day, and then you realize to yourself, okay, being a GM, there's 30 jobs in the world like that, so that one's going to be a little hard. But if I wanted to pursue scouting, so I was actually at Mohegan Sun. It was in 2003, the World Baseball Coaches Convention. And I was sitting down with Gary LaRocque and Gary Carter and Guy Conti, and we're sitting down having dinner. And Gary LaRocque had turned to me, he was the vice president of scouting, and said, "So, do you want to make bobbleheads the rest of your life?" I'm like, "Not really." He's like, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I would love to learn the baseball side of the business too. I know that I coach, but like every coach, you know, we have the armchair of coaches. Oh man, I can do that." No, you can't. You can't see that. But he put me through a rigorous test, I guess. It was to see if I was really serious about doing it. I had to call him every month on the time and day he told me for like 8 months straight. And I did, and then it came in September. He says, "You've been chosen." So all 30 clubs would pick one executive a year to go. So I got fortunate enough to go out there, and I was able to do my training. It was great. It gave me a different perspective on the game, which in today's game is kind of still helpful, but analytics, like I say, are like a pair of glasses. So you can see what you see, and then analytics kind of brings it all together now. So there's a way of working both. But it was fun. You know, I love, you know, when you go out and you watch kids play and you give kids an opportunity to kind of showcase their talents, because, you know, you never know what's going to happen or how many people want to, you know, become professional players. And if you find the right one, I would just call up my local Larry Izzo and Billy Blitzer and the scouts, say, "Guys, I found this guy, take a look at him." And that was really about it.
Sure, it's interesting, different perspective. Another interesting perspective is you became an adjunct professor at LIU Brooklyn in 2014.
Yeah.
Teaching is very different. So was it somebody at the school who had an eye on you, who liked what you had accomplished, who approached you with that opportunity? And how was it like being in the classroom again and teaching and passing off the knowledge that you had accumulated through the years, you know, to kids like me and Nick aren't kids anymore, but how to do that?
It was internally. There was Gene Spatz and Nikki Russo came to me and they said, you know, we have a sports management program that we're starting to build, and would you join us and kind of talk about, you know, how sales and communications and sports really matter. And so we built out this whole program, and I said, well, we'll see how it goes. And I did the first year, and I told them, I said, when no one signs up for the class, then I'll stop. Like, kind of like the Billy Joel, like if no one comes, I'm not going to play no more. So we started doing it, and I did 9 years of doing it. And I would say it's probably one of the greatest experiences that I had, because of the fact it kind of kept me sharp in a way, because you're talking about you're talking about real life situations that we go through on a daily basis in the sports entertainment world, and you're able to bring it out to them. But more importantly, I use my scouting with this as well. We talk about psychology and scouting. I would call it salesology. Like, it's like, hey, listen, you got to be able to sell, but if you can't sell yourself, then you can't sell. I used to say, well, you can't sell shit. So that was kind of where it was, because the truth is that people need to know when you're going into sports, where do you want to be? I get a million phone calls a day of resumes and of people who want to do things. I want to work in baseball. Okay, what does it mean? It's like, but I had 15 weeks with like 20, 25 students, kind of guiding them in a way to go into a direction. And that was special to me. And I was happy to do it. But when I recently, LIU was changed over and they have different programming now. So, and then plus this new job came up. So I'm like, I can't do it all right now.
Right.
So, but it was a lot of fun. It was great.
Yeah, so definitely special to you to kind of, I would say, give back, and also, you learn a lot from it. But something else you do in the same vein there, of course, is the Borough Cup. So how did you ultimately end up forming that? And are you surprised just how much it's grown here over the years?
So I was sitting down. I always wanted to do something in the 5 boroughs. I've been a huge advocate for promoting the game and getting kids to play the game. So much that we were sitting down one day and I said to, at the time it was me, John Franco and Craig Carton was sitting down, and I said, I wanted to do something big for the city, make it like a legacy project that we could all get behind. And the next morning, well, at the time, the next morning, I hear Craig on the radio, hey, we're doing the Borough Cup. I'm like, whoa, time out. We're not ready yet. And we rolled it out. And after the first response that we had of 100 and something teams playing, we said, wait, time out, we have something here. So it was very special to see. We're going into our 9th year of doing the Borough Cup. We've averaged about 100 to 125 teams per year, which is really nice. And the goal of it is, we were growing up, we were more sandlot kids. In the travel ball era today, you didn't go to Marine Park and, you didn't play pickup games. Nowadays, everything's so structured that some of the kids in each borough don't even know each other. So it's like, you want to keep these kids together. You want the city to grow. You want the game to grow. And I've always said, and this is kind of like from where I sit for both teams was, when I look at the stands and I see we don't have enough kids coming to games, it's because we're not promoting correctly at the bottom level. So with that, the Borough Cup has been great. Ben Pincheski, Zach Bright, and the crew, and Nicholas Pincheski, they've been running it now for the last few years. They're doing a tremendous job with it. And this year, August 8th, 9th, and 10th, we'll have it here on Staten Island now. We're going to have a skills competition on the Monday night, and then we'll have championship games on the Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
So what is your current relationship like with the great John Franco, mentioned Craig Carton,
Right.
and also Scary Jones, David Brody from Z100.
Right.
Nick and I were fortunate to have them on the podcast way back when. So what was it like working with them? Like I said, how's your relationship with them? And give us like kind of like a tidbit, maybe a nugget about working with them, moments that you've had with them, where you really needed them and they came through for you in the clutch.
I would say, well, John, I always said, John is like I call him the son of New York City baseball. That's what he should be. He's the Rocky Balboa. But John to me personally through the years, like an older brother, someone who would shoot me straight, tell me when I was wrong. I love John, and he's been a great person to me and my family. And I've always appreciated the times that we've been together and when we talk, and sometimes you move things out of context too. Everybody in New York City looks at John, oh, New York City Met Hall of Famer. Yeah, it's great, but he's also a person. He's a great father, great husband, and he's one of us. He's a Brooklyn, Staten Island, now Manhattan guy, and he's great. Craig, I love Craig. Craig has always been awesome too, because Craig has always been there, very enthusiastic. I always tell people, like, when I listen to, everybody's always listening to Craig because you're always curious what he's going to say next. That's the radio version of Craig, but knowing him as a father, husband, and everything else, tremendous person. He was always there. He's very close with my brother now, and but I will say that Craig's always been there too. When we have that, and then everyone else, Brody and Scary, we go back to 2000. We go back to the early days when they wrote the first song for baseball in Brooklyn. But then over time, as we went along, it was just maintaining that relationship and never losing our roots. And there's a term that we came up with in Brooklyn a long time called Brooklyn Roots. Now it's a famous restaurant in Bay Ridge. My brother has that name on his restaurant now. But Brooklyn Roots we came up with at the Cyclones, and it became like a stigma. Like all the people who grew up with Brooklyn Roots, we always stuck together. Scary, I love Scary. David Brody is one of my guys I would call in the beginning, but now we're all great friends. And to see them successful and everyone else doing their thing has been great.
Yeah, and they're all great people. We've had 3 of the 4 on our show, and a few weeks ago I was playing softball at South Beach with Craig and his son Sonny. Craig knows Ralph's Ices, so I don't think it's going to be long before we see the Craig Carton and Evan Roberts softball team playing at your stadium in Staten Island. Could be happening at some point, so we shall see.
I'm just waiting. Me and Craig, we spoke yesterday about something else, and I told him, I said, listen, the field is waiting. I have a city in the background. This is, this venue, the way I look at it today, this is the New York City, baseball venue, or New York City venue, because overlooking the city and the skyline. It's so special. And for those people like Craig, who has meant a lot to the sports community of New York City, think about it. Like, you can play in an iconic. Craig, if you're listening, just get your ass out of here. Let's go already. Enough more games. Let's just do this. We get it done.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And while we have a moment here, we need to remind our listeners and viewers that the PDF Sports Network is your choice for live streaming your sporting events, producing professional grade television worthy broadcasts on your budget from professional leagues to little league. We believe that if sports are happening, there's an audience waiting to see it, and they deserve the best web stream at a fraction of the price. It's your sport, your stream, and your way at PDF Sports Network. For more info, visit pdfsportsnet.com. So you're now with the FerryHawks. You're running the show. You get approached to come over there as the team is announced at the launch, and you officially in November of 2021 become the executive vice president and general manager of the FerryHawks. Definitely want to hear about how that came about for you, what it's been like. But first, we of course had Shannon Ferry on our show recently.
We had a problem.
She did call you out a little bit, and I know you were ready to come back with the rebuttal to her, because she was very disappointed that she was not the FerryHawks mascot.
Listen, I'm sitting down watching New York 1 when I first get the job here, and I see Shannon Ferry. I'm like, oh, time out. Shannon Ferry, it's perfect. So I reached out to Shannon. I threw I think on Instagram, wherever it was, hey, listen, we got to work together. It's just a natural fit. Let's just talk. And we just kind of hit it off. And her and Rocco came out. We did a nice little piece out here. If she really wanted to be the mascot, she should have said something. I made her like the queen of the FerryHawks. Like, if you want to look at it this way, she got a first pitch. Yeah, she got a jersey. It wasn't a consolation prize. It's a gesture. I give her a jersey coming out. But no, Shannon is awesome. I love Shannon and everyone at New York 1. But if she wants to play this game, we can play it. I've been around a long time, Shannon. So
I think she's got she still has some roots with a rival, the Long Island Ducks, because she used to work for them. So she was talking about how great it was to send the dugout there and speak to the audience. So I don't know, maybe she comes back and she just stands on the dugout and that's it.
I think she needs to come out when we play the Long Island Ducks, and we have what's called the Battle of the Belt.
Yeah.
Maybe she could be the referee of it or something. I don't know. We'll come up with some kind of play on that. Just give me 15 minutes. I'll come up with something. But the thing is with Shannon, knows. She knows if she wants to be the on-field mascot, she's more than welcome. I will get her a bird outfit and see what we get to go.
There you go. So you formed a team, and a lot of stuff went into where you are now. So first, of course, getting the stadium renovated where it hadn't been used in 2 years. I'm sure it was in bad shape. Now you got state-of-the-art facility, awesome turf field, awesome ownership group that you're with. Of course, John Katzimatidis leading the way, and you have the connection with the radio station, which is awesome. And talk to us about just all that process of getting everything ready. And then the bigger thing was, okay, now we got to actually find players for this team. And you had the great connection with Edgardo Alfonso, of course, from the Cyclones, and your last season there that they played championship by him. Of course, his brother was there the first season you were there, so you had that connection with him. But it's a lot there. Just kind of walk us through the whole process, the first few months there.
So yeah, the ownership group. I just want to mention the ownership group. So we have John Katzmatidis and the Red Apple Group, who are partners in this venture. Eric Shuffler and the Magic Waters Group. Eric is the president of the team, and he runs the day-to-day. And him and his group have really the nuts and bolts of getting everything from the city side of things done and getting the place up and running. And Eric led the charge and kind of bringing, reviving baseball in Staten Island with the old borough president, Jimmy Otto. So that was the beginning. And then Randy Levine with the Yankees is part of this, and along with some other people that you may have heard of, Pete Davidson, Colin Jost, Michael Che, and Danny Garcia. They're part of this too. So there's a whole group of people who are in this. So from the beginning, to me, it was kind of interesting to see how this group would kind of, work together. When I came here, I heard about this in July of 21. We had an event actually in Brooklyn, and I was with John and Margot Katzmatidis, and we were talking about it and talking about baseball coming back to Staten Island. And someone in that night had mentioned, he's a personality on ABC. He mentioned, "Oh, Gary, you'd be perfect." And I was like, "Oh, we'll see." I love what I'm doing. As time evolved and everything else, we started having more and more conversations. And like everything else, you want to do something that's great for the community. If you could come here, and when in my conversations with Eric and ownership was like, hey, listen, blank slate, let's from the uniforms, to the name, to everything. It's been a really great process. And for me personally, it was to be able to create something for the residents of Staten Island. And then in addition to that, for the New York City baseball community. And then in addition to that, having a multi-purpose venue now, that's the key thing. And then renaming the park the community park with our partners at Staten Island University Hospital. It was so important. So to have that opportunity to kind of put this all together, and then bringing in, like you mentioned, me and the Alfonso family, we go back to 2001 when Edgar was there. And then I met Edgardo along the way, but we always stayed, together. I have a term I call it the FerryHawks family. And that's what we put together here, the front office staff and the coaching staff. And building the baseball team, I said, we needed to get someone local, someone that I watched grow up here in Staten Island was Eddie Medina. Eddie was a Great Kills, He went to high school out here. He went to Moore Catholic, and then he went to St. John's. Knowing his background, the coaches he played for, and then at the college level, being on the Ed Blankmeyer and Jack Kaiser, I said, here we go. Here's our guy. So we got Eddie involved, and he played in the independent league for a long time. So him having his network of people, you mix in Edgardo and Nelson Figueroa. Let's not forget Nelson. There's Nelson, Coney Island, Brooklyn guy. But having Nelson with us too is definitely added to the mix. So when you have a good structure with people that have a network, we kind of come in together. So, and now with the venue itself is actually selling itself to the players that want to come here. Like we knew that if we had this product, people would want to come play here. So that was the beginning. But seeing it all evolve, seeing where we are today, and trying to recreate things. The 2 years the team was not here, when the old team left, there's a lot of rebuilding. You're not going to fill the stands in the first year. It's got to gain community trust once again. You got to, be out there. But I came November. We're now in July. I'm tired. I can't wait. Someone said to me, "How's the season?" I said, "I can't wait for the end of the season." It's nothing bad. It's because that, the first season was just getting all the kinks out.
Yeah.
And then getting to the community groups. And, when you're building a staff at the same time, there's a lot of moving parts. But we know what we need to do now going into 23, which I think is going to be, I always said the year 22 was the FerryHawk takes flight. Year 23 is the year of the FerryHawk, that's for sure. So that's the way I see it.
Love it. So there's very few things Staten Islanders can agree on. One thing that we can all agree on is the location of where the ballpark is, the view that we have of it into the New York Bay, into the rest of the city is tremendous. It's one of the most beautiful views you'll ever see.
Right.
Talk about using the stadium as a multi-purpose venue, and you briefly touched on your partnership earlier on the podcast with WWE. Obviously, Nick back in 2015 was able to work the WWE promotional night. It was one of the most fun nights he's ever had. So my question to you is, what future events do you think we could expect to see at the stadium? Maybe more wrestling shows, maybe more comedy shows. You mentioned Colin Jost, him and Pete Davidson bought a ferry, right? So maybe there could be a partnership there in the works. As kooky as that sounds, maybe it would work. But the location for it lends itself to potentially having some really different and nice kind of events there. So do you have anything in the works, or do you have any ideas into the future there for the stadium?
So the number one thing was to remember that, with the baseball part of what we're doing, you have 66 games. And in 66 games of baseball, you're going to put your promotional ideas behind those and try to attract people who like the game of baseball. But at the same time, too, we've got to remind people that, minor league baseball is about the entertainment value versus, and then if we have a good team, then it all comes together. So that's the way we've always been. When it comes down to outside events for stadiums like this are extremely important. So the goal this year was to have at least one concert and another event, and we do have it coming up. So August 20th, I'm actually doing a collaboration with Wu-Tang Clan, and we're going to have a night with the Wu-Tang Clan. August 20th, Busta Rhymes is going to be here. We're going to have Ghostface Killer and a bunch of other people for August 20th. It's going to be a concert. And then on September 10th, working with boxing, we're going to have a boxing here. We're going to have NYPD versus the FDNY boxing. And as we go along, you're going to see more events happening. The one thing that we've said this year, it's hard to roll out real concerts. It's hard to put together things in a short amount of time. Planning. So the goal is to bring in everything that you mentioned. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take. And I do see in year 23, there will be a ramped up outside event schedule. In addition to the colleges playing here and the high schools playing here, and flag football and soccer and lacrosse, and who knows what else is going to play here.
Wagner College coming back.
We have a couple of the colleges very interested. High schools are interested. You mentioned the Borough Cup earlier. Borough Cup here. So we have all these. Every day we're trying to have something here. You might not hear about it because it's like last night we had a charity baseball game. And it was for Talented Towers, but that was a private event held privately. But those are the things we're doing on a daily basis.
Absolutely. So we're very much looking forward to seeing the year of the FerryHawk next year, and as the rise continues here, excited about that as well. For you in your career here, maybe you think back to the 90s or whatever it may be, what would you say is your I'm right moment? So what we mean by that is a time where you wanted to do something or pursue something in your career. You either ask a boss or maybe you ask your parents or somebody for advice, and they're like, Gary, I don't think this is going to work. Don't do it. And you're like, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. And ultimately you will see why I'm right.
Well, there's been moments across 22 years that you look back at, you say, okay, well, leaving the transit was the right move. Well, I look back and the guys who are working there now are retired with pensions. I'm like, oh, well, I missed that vote. Okay. And then, so you go forward and now you go into the next phase is, okay, I'm doing community relations, marketing and sales. All right, what's the next thing? So every decision that has been made along the way has been, I've always had, I call it my Mount Rushmore of advisors. At every level I've had one. Whether it be from youth baseball aspect to the professional ranks. I would always look back and call on people. What do you think? The pitfalls, the downfalls. What am I not seeing? But I've always asked advice all the time. I think it's kind of given me different perspectives and clarity. And then there's certain times in your life where you have to make harder decisions. Harder decisions come based upon the time of your life. And sometimes when you work in sports and entertainment, a lot of people, of course, they want to stay the course and be somewhere a long time, but financially it doesn't sometimes work out. So you got to make the moves that at that time in your life that make the most sense. So I don't know if I answered that correctly, but that's just the way it is. Every time there's been a block of time where I believe every year I do a self-evaluation. I evaluate myself. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? What can I do better? You never stop growing in this game or in business or in what you're doing. So you have to use every day. And whoever you speak to, whatever advice you can get, I always tell people, advice is free, and everyone lets give it. So might as well get it. If you ask them for money, oh, that's a different story. No, we can't do that. Advice is there, so that's what you have to utilize.
Terrific insight, Gary. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nick and I are looking forward to seeing you at the stadium very soon. Nick and I are going to expand the scope of the things we'd like to cover. Hopefully, we'd like to cover some things live, and having you as a resource and having you on the show here has been tremendous. You've done a lot here, especially for the boroughs of Brooklyn and Staten Island. Obviously, the Yankees play in the Bronx and the Mets play in Queens. So when the Cyclones and the Yankees came around, really kind of gave us something very local, obviously low A-ball teams, but still something that we could have called our own, and you were a great part of that. So we appreciate and thank you for what you did for us. What we do here is we always give our guests the last words. So if there's anything you would like to share or promote, and we know you do have some things that you would like to share and promote, by all means, go ahead. And again, Nick and I thank you again for taking the time to do this with us. We really appreciate it.
No, I thank you guys too. One of the things that has been really nice is to have time to go out and speak with people this year, and a little bit more than I would usually do. But I'm grateful and thankful to everyone who has supported the things that have been done over years. It doesn't, whether it be the Brooklyn side of things, the Borough Cup, the varsity, anything that we've done here in New York City to grow the game. I'm grateful to everyone. That's number one. And every person you meet along the way. Promotional wise, listen, promotions, go to FerryHawks.com. That's the routine. Go there, go get your tickets and everything else. We do have some fun nights coming up. Yes. I'm changing the name of the team on August 12th on Italian Heritage Night. We're going to now be known as Staten Island Gabagoles. So that's going to be coming up, which I think is, we got to celebrate the Italian delicacies that no one knows how to pronounce. And that's one of the words that we chose this year. So, but we have firework night coming up, country night coming up. So all the great things, FerryHawks.com, you can see it there. And if people want to just reach out and email, they can email me at Gary at FerryHawks. We keep it simple, Gary at FerryHawks.com. And looking forward to working with everyone, whether it be, for-profit, nonprofit, youth baseball, want to do it all.
And before we let you go, Gary, do you care to comment on the historic event that happened at the game a few weeks ago where the mascot and the cameraman were ejected from the game?
It was crazy. I was on the concourse, and I was actually up in the press box where I'm sitting right now. I was up here and I'm watching, like, what's going on? I see, all right, so a player got hit in the wrist, goes out to argue. Now, keep in mind, it's an afternoon game at 11 o'clock at 110 degrees. So everyone on the field, including the umpires, probably not in the best of moods. So the umpire, that ends, and as the umpire is walking towards its way, I'm looking over the rail, and I see him go like this. I'm like, what? Who did you just throw out? Because I ran down the steps, like, Gary, I think you should come down. So I ran downstairs. I said, Silvio, what happened? He's like, well, the mascot and the camera guy said X, Y, and Z. I said, time out. No way. The mascot doesn't talk, number one. All allowed to talk. And I said, our camera guy, Sean, is probably the nicest guy in the world, and I don't think he would ever say that. So afterwards, we're in the back, and whoever Frankie is, I approached him. I said, guys, what did we say? Yeah, I promise, we didn't say anything. It was a person in back of us. So the umpire heard someone from the stands say whatever it was, and I think he said it was them. And I asked the camera guy, I said, Sean, he's like, Gary, I promise you, I believe them. Like sometimes things will happen, but after the game was over, I seen the umpire, and we apologized to him again because we want to give the benefit of the doubt to the umpires. But I say free Frankie, free Sean, and let them get back to work. But now they'll be back. They're okay now, and they'll be back here on our next homestand.
There you go. Gotta stick with the FerryHawks family. Gotta have the families back. So that's going to do it here for this episode of You Know I'm Right. We want to thank our very special guest, Gary Perone. And for my co-host, Joe Calabrese, I'm Nick Durst, and this has been You Know I'm Right.